I'm Demtschenko, Director of Sales and Strategic Accounts for LeverX. Been here about 6 years now. Took an early retirement from SAP back some years ago, where I was a platinum consultant and PLM practice manager for SAP for 17 years. And prior to that, worked at EDS Unigraphics, which is now Siemens, with the iMan and now Team Center software. Did a few projects there for those folks. And then prior to that, I was the engineering systems manager for Eastman Kodak Company, the health group. So a little bit about me. Let's get these slides going. Okay, so here's the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about your data, your crown jewels of your company. A little bit about creating a strategy and the kind of things that you should look at while you're doing that strategy, like reducing complexity and validating functionality and all the kind of things that need to be considered. Then I've got a few screens of things to remember. And then also some LeverX Accelerator Tools that we built along the way from doing a lot of these projects that come in very, very helpful. And then what's next? This is a series, so this is the first of a series of webinars, and we'll talk a little bit about that very quickly. And then if there's some time left, we'll go from discussions and questions. So let's flip over to the next slide. And this is all about data. And over time, data has changed quite a bit, and the requirements for data have changed quite a bit. Like, here's an example. Years ago, somebody has a foundation up here in the screen, and this foundation is falling apart, and you have to replace that. So what we used to do was we used to say, okay, let's make a drawing of what this new foundation is going to look like. Let's lay it all out on paper. And then let's send that paper over to these folks here in the concrete company so we can order what's got to be delivered, and the masons are going to go ahead and start pouring that and doing the work. And that was a typical way we used to do business. And then we found out, geez, what happens when that drawing's not right, or the wrong mixture of concrete happens, or any other problem that intercedes in the way. And then all of a sudden we have ourselves pouring concrete and spending a whole lot of money that's got to be taken back down and redone completely. And that's when things happen that cost you a lot, is when you get into that first initial build phase. So over time with data, engineers and folks have figured out, let's do simulation. So we added this nice simulation capability where when we take our drawing, we send that drawing over to 3D modelers. They take a little digital twin of it. They model out the foundation of what it's going to look like. They simulate it in 3D, do a walkthrough. They know everything exactly. If there's any issues, they can find it in that digital prototyping. And then they go ahead and pour the concrete, knowing that, gee, it's about 100% correct, that what we're going to pour and need is done properly. And all that depends on the data. So again, if the data is not good, the simulation is not going to be good, and the final product, which could be anything, right, from an airplane to a foundation to anything, is not going to be good. And another thing, this data, besides being accurate, data matures over time, and those changes need to be tracked and the data updated. And that's very important, or else you're not looking at the latest data and you're not going to build the right things. And also with this data, there's all kinds of new functionality like simulation, but many other new kinds of functionality that this data can be used for that are going to help in the future. So basically, what it means is you have to have timely, accurate data to make best decisions, right? You want your foundation of your company to be like this, solid and strong. It's going to be built to last for a long time. You don't want something like this where you have bad data, the foundation crumbles, and you have nothing but problems going forward. And remember, any report is as good as the data that's in it. Like salespeople like to go out and sell these really slick, cool-looking reports that you could send to your CEO and get promoted once he sees it. But if that report, even though it looks so good, if the data underneath it is not good, then your report's not really worth that much. And all this is really important because now customers are looking more downstream. The processes are becoming longer, true end-to-end business processes, and that takes a single source of data, accurate, that can be viewed by everybody and made available to everybody in real time. So a little bit about data. It's the lifeblood of your company. It's what makes your company unique. It's your critical advantage. And worse yet, it's what hackers want to target. When they're looking, when some company somewhere around the world is targeting your company and they say, we're going to be like you, we're going to take you out of business, these are the things they're looking for. Okay, so you got to protect those. Again, data must be accurate for anything to work, right? A single source of the truth, like SAP's approach, reduces errors as everyone is looking at the same data. This is tried and true. I've been preaching this since 25 years, that the single source of the truth to the right data to the right person at the right time is the right way to do it within your organization. Also, now with these kind of data being set up and being accurate, you can actually build true end-to-end business processes, cutting through the silos, tying your processes together, which we'll talk a little about. And then think of data as building a house. The data that you're building, the foundation is your basement, right? You can't build a house until the basement is put in place, at least in the East Coast. And so the house, you build a foundation nice and strong, and then you could put the layers of the house on top of it. So other functionality are other floors. But if the foundation isn't good, if the data isn't right, then forget about it. Then things like digital transformation, being able to use big data, be able to use artificial intelligence and machine learning and building IoT networks, all of these things don't work too well if your data isn't correct and done properly. To create your business strategy, one, this is most important, you have the commitment and funding from your executive team. If there's somebody up there at the top level not standing behind you, making sure that this project is going to go and they're there when trouble happens, because on any big project, roles change, information flows change, people don't agree, and then you need somebody at the top that says yay or nay and makes that harder decision. So make sure you have somebody on the executive team that's there that supports it. You have to have a good, solid plan that handles both internal and external resources, because you're going to need help when you're doing these projects. Anytime you deal with data, it's always, things are going to pop up, trust me. You need a strong and transparent PMO team, a team that communicates very well, keeps all the people involved, gets the issues out in front of people right away, communicates up and down the line, and is very organized, status meetings, the whole deal, to make sure that communication is well done. And you especially need to communicate with the people that are going to be impacted by the project. So they have a status, maybe not weekly, but maybe monthly or bi-monthly, where they kind of hear what's going on and participate. One thing you definitely need that a lot of customers don't have is an up-to-date system architecture document. A diagram of your systems, where they are, what versions they are, what are the pipes between them. All these things have to be there. And that's something that, on a few customers have had it and done really nicely, but most customers don't. So if you get into any data project, that's a necessity. It's a basic requirement. It's got to be there. And then your architecture and flow map. So this is the flows of the data, what flows in, what flows out, which what's going to be replaced, what are the systems that are there today, what's a legacy system, You know, you're going to replace some of these legacy systems. You're going to migrate data. You're going to have to clean data. You're going to replace systems. You're bringing it into SAP. All these things have to be considered on what you want to do on your projects. And take the time to reduce complexity, okay? Take the time to clean the data, because garbage in, garbage out. I know everybody's data is perfect. I hear it on every project. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So plan on being able to take a look at your data and cleaning it up. And the best people that clean that data are the people that work with that data every day. So as consultants, we don't really always know what's right and what's wrong. Your people do. So they're the best people to be involved in any of these data cleansing operations that need to be there. Secondly, on most of these projects, when you're doing upgrades or new systems, it's a big project. So what you're going to have to do is take that project and break it down into chunks. And then you're going to take your chunks of your project functionally and split it up into what you're doing today and what needs to be done on in the new system, validate that it's there, and then look at the data streams. So that's very important, is being able to break it down into logical components and assigning the right people to those logical functional components. And then you can identify and group the variables, because there's going to be a lot of variables that you're going to run into along the way, how to organize things, what has to go onto the roadmap, what systems stay, what systems go, when do they go. Those kind of things have to be addressed. So while you're building your roadmap in more detail to your project plan, and then once you get that done, you can sew these back together into end-to-end business processes where you really get the bang for your buck on these projects. Validating functionality is very important. One, you have to see what you're using today, okay? And whatever you're using today better darn well be available in what you're going to do tomorrow, or else you're going to have a revolt on the users, because they're going to say, well, I can't do my work. You took this away, you took that away. And being an engineer, I can say this, and that's especially true for engineers. They're going to cry about everything. So they want to make sure that their functionality is there, because they need it. They need that to do their daily job. And anything that you're doing on an upgrade, if you take away that capability, as long as you can offer them something that's equivalent or better, that gives them the capability, what they need to do, then you're okay. But the minute you have a gap here and a gap there, that's going to cause you problems. So work very closely with them, get them involved early to make sure that you validate what is there today is going to be there tomorrow. And stay process focused. Once you get your chunks in place and you've got the lower level processes working, now we got to look at the processes across SAP, end-to-end business process, and then also including the other systems that are strategic, and even the legacy systems that are going to be there for a while that you need before you move on to the new environment. And make sure that what you have today, again, is what's available tomorrow, and then we're going to start mapping this out together, right? And lay out the plan so you can have a nice flow chart of what the systems are, what the data is going in and out, what the process is, who the agents are involved in it. All of these have to be mapped out. And then you get some nice conference room demos, because with a lot of these accelerator solutions, we can show you things in the conference room of what it's going to look like. And it's not going to be like an old SAP project where you have to build a whole big workflow months and months before you can start looking at these processes. You can look at them pretty early. And that really helps you out later, because if a change has to come to the processes, it's pretty easy to implement that change and make it immediately available versus the old days of standard SAP workflow. Some things to remember. Most customers are going to use the step-by-step approach, which means they're going to simplify their landscape and retire their legacy systems either before or during the upgrade. So that's going to reduce the risk to the project. It may increase the scope because you're going to be moving some things early or moving as part of the project. So you're going to have people that are technical and functional people working well as a team to decide out, okay, what's going to go in the SAP? What systems don't we need anymore? How clean is that data in the legacy system? How is it best to be migrated? How are we going to migrate it? What tools are available? When do we migrate it? All those kind of things have to be answered, and they're very important things that you have to discuss and talk about. Also, many customers will have a mixed environment. Like S4, people are pushing Fiori, and that's where SAP is going in the future. But still, you may have some users that are running on SAP GUI that never goes away. NetWeaver Business Client. On the engineering side, you have the PLM Web UI. Geez, you might have CDES users still around, and Engineering Control Center, which is the hot CAD integration solution from SAP that many, many customers are using. So you're going to have a mixed environment. And you also may have a Team Center or a Windchill, or you might have a lot of these different UIs running in the company. So all of those have to be considered when you're looking at these upgrades. And then what you want to look at tools that LeverX offers to help you make it easier when you're doing these projects. Like sometimes, you may have to keep these legacy systems around a little longer than you hoped. So it's easy to, with the LeverX tools, be able to automate the collection of the data that these systems provide, push them into the SAP system, or pull that information out back to the legacy system in a simple automated fashion. So the users don't have to worry so much about being in two different environments. They're in their S4 environment, and then they're also in a lot of automated environments, which can really reduce the time and effort they need to do while you're in this bridge process of moving over. Something to consider, highly recommended. Also, your business processes need to support all SAP objects. Like when you're doing your if it's a PLM project, it's documents and BOMs and material masters and engineering changes. Those are the kind of things we always focused on. But now you're going to think a lot bigger than that, because the product doesn't, the output of an engineering group is not the CAD drawing and the 3D model. It's the product at the end. So being able to tie these processes together and leverage that engineering information, like John and Sergey are going to talk about, then you're going to see that pushing that information downstream allows you to create business processes downstream as well. And then these processes, like using LeverX IPS, you're going to be able to tie these processes together. So your workflows, instead of being big giant workflows, are small, intelligent workflows that call each other based on statuses or rules or agents or triggers, human or automatic in the system. All of these things are going to help you create these end-to-end business processes. And that's where you're going to get the true reduction in time and reduction in cost. And that's why we always say investing in these accelerator tools, if they're able to take the project and shrink it down by 3 months, you're saving a ton of money. And then reducing the maintenance time as you're moving over to your full implementation and retiring these legacy systems, that's a big deal. Third, end-to-end business processes need to be integrated all the way back to engineering. So whatever engineering tools you're using, they need to be able to start and participate in these processes. And if you don't do that, then the engineers are going to feel left out. You're going to have a gap. So it's important to think about end-to-end business process from engineering all the way to discontinuance of a product. And third, and finally, this is a good opportunity to clean house and standardize whatever data processes and data that you need to, and think about making life easier for the whole organization. So if it means the engineers have to do a little bit more work, but that saves the manufacturing and maintenance people 40% of the work that they do, then by golly, it's worth the investment by the engineers to do that up front. And maybe there's some automated tools that'll help the engineers so they don't have to deal with this as a manual thing. So that's another kind of thing to consider when you're going through these projects. A little bit about our Accelerator Tools. These are tools that we built that are come from a lot of years of experience, okay? From a lot of projects we've done, over 650, I believe, with SAP that were successful on putting in projects and adding functionality. And these are kind of the tools that have evolved out here that customers have asked for and we noticed. And SAP, you know, they roll out a great solution and then they're onto the cloud and S4. So whatever little gaps that are in there, these are the kind of solutions that can help close those gaps and make it easier for customers. Integrated process solution, it's 2 transports into your SAP system. You can configure it. It uses standard SAP workflow below it. And think of it as an easy to add on, drag and drop, build your own workflow within a nice environment that non-ABAP professionals can do. So you might have business people that want to create a template or modify a template or create an ad hoc workflow. These are things they can do provided you give them the authority to, and do that at the business level versus having to stand in line at the IT queue and wait for some ABAP or someplace to come in and do the work for you and send it back and forth 5 times before it's right. We can also added a capability called BMAX. And also one other thing about IPS, because processes expand over different SAP objects and different SAP user interfaces, IPS handles all that. So regardless of what SAP object you need to collaborate with, regardless of what SAP user interface you're using, and regardless of what device you're using, like an iPhone, an iPad, a PC, Surface, whatever, IPS runs across all of that, okay? And it also runs into the cloud. So it's a solution that ties together all your SAP systems as well as non-SAP systems, so you could include all these people, processes, and data in your workflows and your business processes. So you can create true end-to-end business processes. BMAX is a solution that came out because a lot of customers have a lot of plans, right? And you create a material master, you create a BOM, you have to extend it out to the plant so people are using it. You might have plants all over the world. So now you do a change to a material master or a BOM that has to get out and be replicated to all the different plants. And with the BMAX rules engine, you set up the rules one time, we define all the plants, and then you can automate the process of extending BOMs and material masters out to the plants, triggered by a IPS process. So think of BMAX as being a plug-in to IPS. You have your release process, and boom, when it gets to a certain point, based on the rules that you put in, BMAX sends out that information to the plant so they're notified. So that's really nicely done. Saves a lot of time and really saves a lot of time. We've seen customers save weeks and months of time just using this. Also, IQ Series, SAP, they've always had the most powerful system, but not always, I'd say, the easiest to use intuitive system, right? So IQ Series is a solution to that. With SAP and S4, they're moving to Fiori, and that's basically what IQ Series is. It's a series of Fiori-based screens that allow you to use certain SAP functionality very easily and from any device. So it's really cool. It makes it easy to use SAP, and that's something that usually you don't doesn't go together well. Easy and use SAP. You know, it's a complex, big system, but the Fiori migration and the move to IQ Series is something that's going to make it much easier for users to use the tool and actually enjoy using the tool. Big deal out there is digital transformation, and that's being able to take your information now and digitize it, make it available for everybody out in the engineering world, leveraging your CAD models to create digital twins, and then being able to have maybe a tail number or a serial number for every specific configuration of a digital twin at every customer site, like medical devices and ships and planes and tanks and all these kind of things are great candidates for digital transformation. And at LeverX, since we have many of the visual enterprise folks now working for us, we added visual to that term because you know today that nobody likes to read anything. The next generation of people coming that you're going to hire, they're not into reading. They don't want to go through stacks of books and papers. They want to right mouse click on an image, see the information that they're looking for, and maybe they'll right mouse click again and order it or start the process or add a comment. That's as far as they want to go. So that's what digital transformation gives you. It gives you the capability to do that. And then finally, VLOX is a integration platform. So you could use this, like if you bought a company, you want to migrate all that data into SAP, you can use VLOX. Maybe you're just going to take a couple products and you're going to migrate them into SAP or out of SAP. You could use VLOX to do that. Or maybe you just want to integrate SAP to your legacy systems and run them in parallel daily and share information back and forth until you move what you want into SAP, or maybe you're just going to keep them in place. VLOX will do that as well. It could be a plug into your IPS process and collect the data that you need, parse it out, put it where it has to go. So these are the kind of accelerator tools that we have that try to make your company better. Finally, here's a list of the bunch of customers. I won't tell you all this. You can look at this at your leisure. We'll send this out. And then finally, what's next? The next, we're going to have a technical webinar that's going to have some details around this. Like maybe you want to secure your supply chains and move them closer to your manufacturing locations. We know a lot of people have been doing that. So that's kind of like the discussions we're going to have to follow on, where Sergey, our Director of Product Development, and John Irvin, our Director of Digital Transformation, will give you some ideas from a deeper technical perspective of the kind of things you can do. This would be one scenario. And then we'd like to hear from you other scenarios that you'd like to have. So if you have things that you'd like to see, things you want to talk about, how do we apply these things, send an email back to me or Matt or any of the folks on this list here, and we'll go ahead and get you a webinar set up to address that.